Morning, everybody. Welcome to another round of coffee and questions. What's today's topic? We're going to work on a pair of benches that go to a picnic table. They're made out of steel with a wood top, Douglas fir, and they've been decayed over time. I live out in desert cities, and what happens, the weather really takes its beating, especially in any kind of a varnish finish on the wood. I've even used Helmsman, and it just doesn't hold up over a longer period. It holds up longer, but it starts to really decay and mess up fast. And I'm going to pan around. I'm going to show you a picture of it, and then we're going to get started. And then we'll figure out as we go how we're going to make these look good again. I've got some materials around here that we can use, and we'll figure it out together. Let me pan around. Let me show you the bench seats, and we'll go from there. I'll see you in just a sec. Okay, I got a couple of horses here. I put the first bench seat up on top, and I'll zoom in. You can see how weathered it really is. Somebody made the comment, what's that yellow string thing with the dangling red ball? It's just it's a play toy for my stray cats. I keep it out on the side of the garage. They play with it. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with the project. Anyway, back up to the project. It's all decayed. It's all messed up on top. Let me zoom in. There's a better view of it. Now I got my belt sander out. I'm going to start it, and then I'm going to shut the camera off. But what I'm going to do, because of the dust and everything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 80 grit, and I'm going to strip off all that old finish. And then I'm going to go over to 120 or 150. We'll take a look at it. We'll decide from there. Give me just a sec. Okay, I finished with the 80 grit, and then I realized I don't have any 120 grit belt sanding paper. So that's okay, it'll take me a little bit longer. I'm going to use my Bosch, my random orbital here, and I'm going to go to 120 grit. I'll look at it, I may go 150, I might not. These are just benches for outside, and then I'll show you what we'll do in terms of the finish. Now for the metal, I'm going to use probably a flap disc, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And I'll clean up all the rust areas, and we'll get that ready for repainting. Because you can see, especially down towards the bottom, let me zoom in on one of them. You can see it's rusted pretty good. So we'll clean all that up, and we'll put something protective on it paint-wise. Alright, so let me go back up to the top. Okay, so I'll use the random orbital sander here and the 120 grit. It throws off a lot of stuff, even though I'm just outside of my garage door. So I'm going to shut this off. Watching me saying it's kind of boring, so I'll be back with you as soon as I finish this 120. Okay, I got done sanding it. Now I need to kind of prep the metal here. So I'm going to use my Milwaukee angle grinder. I think they're 4.5-inch flap discs. Flap discs come from Benchmark Abrasives. Like I said, I'll leave the links below, and I'm going to go ahead, clean up all of the rust, and then I'll use my random orbital just to lightly rough sand the steel and prepare it for painting. So let's get started. Okay, well, the compressor kicked on, and it overpowers everything on the video. So where did I leave off? I used my angle grinder like you saw, and it had a 120 grit flap wheel on there, like I said. And I went over all the steel on here. I got off all the surface rust, and I roughed it up pretty good. And then I used my random orbital and just lightly went over it with 120, kind of blending in scratches and playing around. And it's real quick, I mean, to do it that way. And roughing up the surface will help prepare it for the coat of paint I'm going to put on the rail part of this. Now, what am I going to use? Let me look around. I'll be right back. I'm not sure. Okay, I went digging around, and I got these 3 cans. 2 of them are brand new, and the one without the lid I've used a little bit out of. The one that I used a little bit out of, I'll use to spray all the underneath parts because it's not going to show. And then I have the other 2. And this is like they call it a hammered matte finish, and it's in like a black. So I'm going to go ahead, tape the wood off. I'll be back with you, and we'll use the rattle cannon. Let's spray the outside of this, then we'll talk about the wood finishing. Okay, I did a couple of test spots, Now the open can on the right that I thought I'd use for the underneath, that's kind of a brown, hammered kind of a look, kind of a paint. The other's a black, hammered looking paint. I'm going to skip the brown, move it to the side. I'll use my two new cans that I have here. One of the nice things about using this hammered paint, if you have any imperfections or where you get a little too much and you think there might be a little bit of a run, this hammered paint kind of hides it. So let me show you real quick, and then we'll get on with the rest of the project. Okay folks, I've gotten it to that point where it's sanded and it's ready for some kind of a finish. Now, I don't want to have to keep doing the varnish thing because of all the oxidization and what the sun does to it and all that. So I thought I'll either use boiled linseed oil or I'm going to use this preserva wood. I've got some of this left from an overhang here at the house where I had coated the whole thing. It's been like that for years and years. It still looks really great. So I'll probably use this preserva wood, but you could use linseed oil. You'll get a slight amber hue to it if you put it on this Douglas fir. This gives it a little bit more character by making it a little bit darker because those frames were that hammered charcoal that we painted it. I'm going to pan around, I'm going to show you putting it on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on and I'm going to keep it wet with this preserva wood finish for about 15 minutes solid. Go over all the dry areas, let it soak in as much as it wants to. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to scrub it off nice and clean. So let me pan around and show you. Okay, time's gone by and this has stayed wet now for 15 minutes or better. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take it off with a cloth that I have. Okay, I'm going to let that sit out in the sun, dry thoroughly. It's not going to hurt anything being in the sun. It'll just help bake it in, and then we'll come back, we'll look at this in the morning, and we'll wrap up this project. So, see you in the morning. Okay, it's the next day and it's dried. It's not totally dry. I'm going to let it sit for another maybe 1-2 days like this to where it's totally dry. Now, I'm not going to put anything else on here. I mean, of course, you could use some kind of a wax, Johnson's paste wax, something like that if you wanted to. I may or may not, but the wax is going to come off of it fairly easily because people will be using it and sitting on it. But this kind of wraps it up. Now, the other thing, you could have used boiled linseed oil. I chose the preserva wood. Like I said, the links will be below. So let me switch inside. We'll do questions and answers. We'll wrap this up. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this bench seat project, and I'm not going to put anything on the top because with this preserva wood, if it starts to get dull, faded, it starts to look funky, all I got to do is just wipe on another coat, let it dry for a while, scrub it off with a towel. It'll come right back to where it is now. You could have done the same thing with boiled linseed oil. Now the only difference, somebody had asked, would I just used it right out of the can like that? No, I would have put some into a container. I would have thinned it a little bit with mineral spirits. The reason for that is I found like on a lot of wood turnings and stuff especially, it will soak in better and deeper. And then again, I would just keep applying it. It thinned out, keeping it wet for that 15-20 minutes. Let the dry spots suck it in real good. And then when you have it pretty much where it's looking wet on the top, leave it alone for 15-20 minutes or so, then you want to scrub it off. Now both of these You want to scrub it off and then, wipe it down real good. Make sure it's super dry. If you don't do that, what's going to happen, especially with the boiled linseed oil, is you'll get this sticky, gooey film, and then you're going to be mad. There is a way around it. You can use mineral spirits and get a rag and kind of dampen it real well and then start to scrub it down if it hasn't been sitting there too long, and that will thin it back out, and then let it dry, and then do it, another application, let's say, and then make sure you clean it off real well. So that was one of the questions off of the forum. Let me take a quick look if there was anything else. When the time comes, I'll do it the same way. I'll use the belt sander, and I'll sand it all down between that and the random orbital, and I'll get it all prepped, and I'll do it the same way. That's the way it was originally done, but there was a top coat put on there because it was meant to be more under like a covered patio, but it didn't turn out that way. So I'm sure in the long run it'll blister too, but that's the way that I'll refinish the top of this when I can. Now I will tell you, the boiled linseed oil, it's a little bit off topic. I have, big, large wooden workbenches I'm pointing over. You can't see them. It's got 3/4 plywood on top. Now when I put those on, I cleaned it off real well, kind of scuff sanded it lightly, let's say with 150. And then I used boiled linseed oil all over the top of the workbench. I let it dry real well and scrubbed it off like I told you. Then in like a week or two, it took a while before I felt that it was really dry. And then, whether you use Minwax or use Johnson's Paste Wax, if you still have a can of it laying around, I used just the Minwax, and I covered the whole top of it with Minwax, and then, with hand and a rag, I scrubbed it all off. Now I use that Minwax, paste wax. I put that on the top of like my bandsaw, table, drill press table, table saw, bed, and on the ways of my lathe, and it helps keep the corrosion away. So periodically I do that as maintenance. But anyway, that's on the Minwax paste wax. There's a link below. It's cheap, comes in real handy for a whole bunch of things, including the finish on a project. But I'm not going to do that like on these workbenches. All right, folks, I think the video's been long enough. If you got any other questions, drop them below. You got a better way of finishing this stuff, let me know. That hammered, spray can paint really hides a lot of defects and stuff, so I was glad that I had the extra cans. I used them. It looks good. You might consider it. Again, the links are below on that stuff. Comes in a multitude of colors. All right, I'm going to let you go. I hope you folks have a great day. I'll see you again soon on the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.